In this new era of change and transformation, companies are being forced to create long-term value by taking into consideration the ecological, social, and governance principles. Risk management has taken on a whole new perspective, with the focus on investing having shifted to be ESG aligned. With the emergence of climate change, social activism, and now the COVID-19 pandemic, we are more aware that our futures are not certain. Times are changing. Stakeholder capitalism has taken the world by storm, and the resounding effects are far-reaching and tangible. With the election of President Joe Biden, creating sustainability goals for the US, to the revelation of Elon Musk becoming the world's richest man through his focus on sustainability and activism, we have seen companies, people, and even icons swing from beloved to eschewed in a matter of days. Movements like Black Lives Matter, the fight against gender-based violence, and gender equality, among others, have demonstrated the world's shift into a new era of governance and tolerance. Social unrest and climate action have settled to the forefront of stakeholders' minds. Investors are seeking both positive returns and a positive long-term impact on society and the environment, expanding their horizons far beyond just financial returns. The term responsible investing has become synonymous with sustainability practices and frameworks that are becoming part of the regulatory environment across the globe. We do not know what the future holds, but mitigation to imminent risk for humanity and the planet are key. Leaning into change and having the right tools to navigate is critical. Being local and thinking global is vital. Every region, each economy, and each nation has a dynamic of its own. No two countries are alike, and as such, we cannot apply the same protocols, restrictions, and guides to all of them. New challenges require new approaches, far beyond the frameworks and rating systems of the past that used to dictate a narrowed view of ESG. As the world moves forward toward a reign of sustainability, the different facets of ESG and risk management need to be understood and accounted for, as they differ between countries and regions. Stakeholders need to work together from across the world and all walks of life in order to balance the scales. For all stakeholders, tools are needed to accurately quantify this unstructured data and navigate it in substantial solutions. Now, there is a new era of responsible business. Now, there is a tool that will reshape the landscape of investing. Now, there is ESG GPS.
Good morning and welcome. Welcome to Africa's drive towards sustainability, ESG GPS Nigeria. The launch of Nigeria's first ever artificial intelligence ESG rating model. I'm your host for today. My name is Andrei Bogdanov. I am principal at Risk Insights. ESG GPS is a rating tool which is based on 6 years of data for all companies listed in Nigeria. Our ratings are taking into account big data, voluntary and mandatory disclosed by listed companies, news feeds about the companies, and financial performances of the companies. Our sophisticated ESG GPS tool was developed by Africa Data Scientist team, led by Risk Insights founder Anushka Bogdanov. Together with Instinctive Partners, we're very proud to bring you today the launch of an ESG GPS ratings in Nigeria, built by Africans for Africa and the world. Our ESG GPS Rich Rating Toolbox can provide companies, its stakeholders, asset managers, and regulators with a consistent view on a company's sustainability based on cutting-edge machine learning approach and independence to serve people, prosperity, principles of good governance, and the planet. Unfortunately, circumstances did not allow Temi Papola, the CEO of the Nigerian Exchange Group Limited, to join us today. He has sent a message of support for the launch of the ESG GPS for Nigeria, to reinforce the importance of ESG for the country capital markets.
Environmental, social, and governance factors have become a critical aspect of the investment decision-making process. However, the prevailing challenges of inconsistency, incomparability, and lack of alignment in standards of ESG reporting frameworks present the most significant concern for investors in their quest to access decision-useful ESG investment data. For us at NGX, we are committed to fostering the growth of ESG reporting across our ecosystem. Through the unveiling of NGX Sustainability Disclosure Guidelines in 2019, we provided a consistent approach for investors to access ESG data from issuers listed on NGX. Risk Insights has taken this a step further by building the first ESG machine learning and AI tool for Africa by Africans. We welcome the application of this innovative solution in improving sustainable, responsible, and impact in Africa, and look forward to reaping the benefits of improved allocation of capital to support Africa's sustainable development and transition to a low-carbon economy.
I'm very pleased to introduce at this stage our special guest for the day, Aisha Ahmad, the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Aisha, over to you.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm very delighted to join you at this historic launch of the first ESG ratings model for Nigeria, developed by Risk Insights. Environmental, social, and governance ESG-related matters have become an issue of topical concern. Global institutions are increasingly focused not only on driving shareholder value, but also on their impact on the environment, welfare of people, and instituting credible governance to ensure their long-term sustainability. The COVID-19 pandemic has only intensified this focus, given its disproportionate impact on vulnerable groups and the potential to exacerbate inequality. The financial sector and global central banks across the world face the same considerations: climate change and extreme weather events such as wildfires, hurricanes, floods, and drought, and the forced migration and social issues arising from these disruptions can negatively impact the key mandates of price stability, financial stability, and could contribute to future crises. These risks impact the financial infrastructure that promotes financial inclusion, such as payment systems, credit systems. For instance, people will require mortgages, small business loans to migrate, and they'll also require insurance to cover lost agri income. The threat of climate change can also negatively impact the ability to secure loans in future and to get insurance. Central banks and the financial services industry are important actors in mitigating and reducing the impact of climate and environmental risks. They have a key role to play in the mitigation, transition, and recovery and resilience. Central banks indeed are positioned with the technical ability and the convening power to promote awareness across jurisdictions. Christine Lagarde at the ILF conference on green banking stated that the fact that central banks are not in the driving seat doesn't mean they can simply ignore climate change or that they do not play a role in combating it. Financial institutions as well can be encouraged to support recovery and resilience through advancing credit, insurance, savings, and facilitating payments. So what we find is that central banks are integrating these risks into supervision and macroprudential analysis and pursuing inclusive green finance, which essentially links green finance and financial inclusion to improve resilience. The AFI Inclusive Green Finance Working Group is an example of a group that is, at the forefront of moving this effort. On our part, the CBN developed the Nigeria Sustainable Banking Principles in 2012. It provides for 9 principles that ensure that the activities of financial institutions foster positive development impact to society and the communities in which we operate. We've supported this with initiatives that promote insurance, risk sharing, and de-risking the impact of climate-related risks like flooding, and drought, like I mentioned earlier. We're also focused on expanding access to low-interest loans through the Anchor Borrower Program and similar initiatives. We're also looking at reforming the Nigerian Commodity Exchange to reduce income volatility of smallholder farmers. The CBN will continue to support initiatives that improve resilience and promote awareness of ESG issues. So a lot has been done, but what else can we do? We can gather more data on climate and ESG issues. We can implement frameworks for resilience. We can provide incentives for financial institutions and other global institutions to pursue green finance. We can support the transition by providing financing for low carbon technology, which is required by small to low income economies and MSMEs. We can facilitate trade. The Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement and the Africa Union Agenda 2063, issues on climate can be pursued. Global private sector institutions must integrate and incorporate the impact of these risks in their business models into a robust ESG framework, such as the ESG GPS ratings that Risk Insights is launching today. I believe this is a critical step for raising awareness of ESG issues in Nigeria. And whilst I'm congratulating Risk Insights for this bold move, I encourage all companies listed on the exchange to review their ratings and take proactive steps to focus on areas that will improve their sustainability. I thank you for listening.
The largest population and highest GDP in Africa, Nigeria is definitely leading the way. Yet, with all developments, country remains one of the most biologically, culturally, and environmentally diverse nations in Africa. This is why ESG and sustainability are ever-growing concerns among its people and businesses. Nigeria started the decade of actions for SDGs in January 2020. The outbreak of COVID-19 took place, thus challenging the prospects of achieving the SDGs in Nigeria, like in most countries. Speaking about SDGs and global perspectives, an organization where SDGs are being translated into the business language. Among others, the first name that comes to mind is the World Economic Forum. At this moment, I'm very pleased to introduce our next speaker from the World Economic Forum in Geneva, Switzerland, Alexander Raffol, the Head of Business Engagement for Africa and Middle East. Alexander, over to you.
Thank you, Andre. It's a pleasure to join this exciting launch. My name is Alex Raffol. I head the Business Engagement team at Africa and the Middle East at the World Economic Forum. It's a particular pleasure for us to come in and feature a bit of the state of play as we see it in Africa, talking about the role of business and highlighting some of key collaborative items that we have with Risk Insight. At the very first, according to the United Nations SDG report for 2020, the world is not quite on pace with meeting the SDG deadline, and on average, Africa's progress is slower compared to that of the rest of the world, for many underlying and understandable reasons. However, at present, most African companies and countries, including in West Africa, are not positioned to achieve their SDG targets by 2030, and much needed progress is being impeded by the ongoing impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, the Africa SDG Index and dashboards reports for 2020 ranks West Africa third out of 5 sub-regions in terms of its constituent countries' progress towards SDG attainment. The same report also ranks Nigeria 42nd out of 52 countries that had sufficient data for the ranking itself. And as such, data-based decision-making and tools are critical, and more needs to be done in order to help steer Nigeria and Africa more broadly towards an SDG attaining journey. Since the private sector has long been regarded as a key stakeholder in realizing the Global Sustainable Development Goal promise, there exists today a golden opportunity for Nigerian businesses community to contribute ever more to the country's SDG target by establishing and committing to regular ESG disclosure, as well as working continuously to improve their performance year on year. By embracing a strong ESG proposition, businesses in Nigeria can, among other things, number one, play a direct role in helping the country achieve its SDG target by acting responsibly themselves and proactively running their operation in alignment with very global underlying ESG trends such as climate change and social justice. Companies of all size and of all make can do their part by reducing, for example, their carbon footprint. This can be done by sourcing their energy need from green and alternative sources, reducing the amount of water, fertilizers, and plastic they use in production, controlling and disposing the waste of their operation more responsibly, from a socio-economic well-being of their employee perspective and the community that they serve, they can support access to education, sanitation, and technology, promote gender parity in their companies and in their communities, support poverty reduction program, investing in water and microgrid infrastructure programs in their communities at local or at national levels. The second thing for the businesses is generally to try and attract foreign capital from a growing pool of investors that are committed to investing in ESG compliant enterprise. There is a lot of ESG funds floating around. If you assume 15% growth or half the pace of each one of the past 5 years, ESG assets under management globally could reach up to 50 trillion between now and 2025, a third of the global assets under management prediction. And the growth of ESG exchange traded funds is also quite notable, with representing about 13% of global ETF asset growth. Therefore, there is a huge opportunity for Africa to tap into this long-term and growing pool of capital, but the private sector needs to understand that they need to make some key changes today, because the investors, especially the younger ones, will scrutinize ever more the ESG scores and how companies generally deal with their employees, their communities, and the planet at large. Important to note that government needs also to back this up with the right subsidies and the right regulatory environment. The private sector cannot do it alone. Last but not least, the companies also can leverage the brand awareness and the performance of their metrics in order to attract consumers and employees, because as we quite understand well, in the future, both what we consume and where we work will change, and will take into account ESG and footprints of all sorts within that umbrella. The launch and use of Risk Insight ESG rating tool within Nigerian Stock Exchange is a critical step to promote positive ESG-related competition among the country's businesses and incentivize ESG prioritization. You cannot improve what you do not measure, and therefore the Risk Insight AI-powered tool is particularly valuable in helping generate this data so that we can start the improvement journey. The tool is in line with the World Economic Forum's ongoing commitment to delivering on the promise of stakeholder capitalism. Through our International Business Council, we've created, alongside Bank of America and the Big Four consulting firm, a core set of relevant ESG metrics and recommended disclosures that could reflect in a mainstream report in the annual reports of the signatories of those principles. And therefore, a testament as well to the commitment that the World Economic Forum has to the ESG and ESG-related innovations is the fact that the forum welcomed Risk Insight as a new champion community, part of the new champion community. It's a dynamic cohort of high-growth institutions that are championing new business models, emerging technologies, and sustainable growth strategies in the fourth industrial revolution. We're also very proud to have seen Risk Insight win the new Champion Community Excellence in Agile Governance Award. A warm congratulations and thank you to Anushka Bogdanov, Blessing Emre, and the team at Risk Insight for the collaboration. And a special thank you to Julia Devos and Anil Dambasha at the World Economic Forum for helping make the collaboration and the launch today a success. Thank you.
Many look at Africa as a continent of problems. We see enormous opportunities and hope. To tell you more about how ESG GPS works and why it is unique and stands above the rest as the best rating tool, we have Anesh Pillay, Risk Insight's acting CEO and Chief Commercial Officer, ESG GPS, and Anissa Ragallo, the head of the Data Lab of Risk Insights. Anesh, Anissa, over to you, please.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Anesh Pillay, and I'm the acting CEO of Risk Insights.
Hello everyone, my name is Anissa Ragallo and I have the absolute privilege of being the head of the data lab here at Risk Insights.
ESG GPS is the first in the world to rate the entire Nigerian exchange. Can you believe that, Anissa?
I certainly can, Anashrin. And as an expectant mother, I'm quite excited about the prospect of ESG GPS for Africa, because ESG is all about safeguarding the future for the generations to come.
Well, she has rated 160 counters from 2016 to 2020, and those that have reported in 2021. She also rates small caps, medium caps, and large caps. Asset managers, financial institutions, and regulators are looking at listed companies from a granular perspective in terms of ESG disclosure and sustainability.
But Nashrin, what does this mean for the common man and for the country as a whole?
Well, it increases impact investing and capital flows into Nigeria. And Nigeria will gain a competitive advantage to improve access to investments into the country. So Anissa, can you tell us a little bit more about ESG GPS?
I certainly can, and let's go ahead. Now, the ESG GPS model is a rating system using artificial intelligence, machine learning, and big data. Now, most people are familiar with these buzzwords, but I'll define them in the context of the model for clarity. Artificial intelligence, or AI, is the simulation of human intelligence in computers or machines that are programmed to think like humans and mimic their actions. In turn, machine learning is a particular application of AI involving the development of computer programs that can access data and use it to learn for themselves. Now, the key concept in machine learning is programs or algorithms that can learn for themselves without being explicitly programmed. This has far-reaching applications in our model. Lastly, big data, by definition, is the analysis and systematic extraction of information from large and complex datasets.
So Anissa, the ESG GPS model incorporates all of these elements?
It does indeed, Nashrin. The ESG GPS model uses artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms to analyze big data and produce meaningful output from the data.
But Anissa, that's not the only thing that makes the ESG GPS model unique. ESG GPS is the only model that rates an entire stock exchange, small caps, mid caps, and large caps. Other ESG models only rate a subset of an exchange, typically only the large caps or mid caps. However, ESG is in fact a must-have for all companies, and market capitalization should not be a determinant of the companies held accountable for performance on ESG factors.
Well, I agree, Nashrin. Another advantage that we have over our competitors is that other ESG models are based on the conventional logistic or linear regression approach, where companies fill out a questionnaire and the quantitative data from the questionnaire is put into a logistic or linear model. On the other hand, the ESG GPS model uses advanced machine learning approaches, including neural networks. These advanced machine learning approaches have three advantages over conventional logistic or linear regression modeling. Our algorithms are flexible, more powerful, and deliver better performance. So Nashrin, let's dive into our ESG GPS rating process in a lot more detail. Essentially, the rating process boils down to this. ESG GPS looks at both unstructured and structured data. Some of the unstructured data that we look at is a company's publicly disclosed documents. And by this, I'm referring to both mandatory and voluntary disclosure, including reports such as a company's integrated report, as well as other reports that make up the company's reporting suite for a given financial year. ESG GPS also looks at policies, charters, guides, and general disclosure. We use the information provided in these publicly disclosed documents as a proxy for the company's performance on ESG factors.
So Anissa, what about news feeds? Do you take that into account?
We certainly do, Nashrin. The negative news feeds form part of our unstructured data input to the ESG model. Here we look at news feeds from credible financial news sources. News feeds make an important contribution to a company's rating because ESG issues such as non-compliance with environmental protection laws and even accounting or corporate governance issues do come out in the news. And the goal here is for a company's rating to reflect what is happening in actuality as much as possible. The input to our model also includes quantitative or structured data. Here we look at a company's financial year-end market cap, as well as the average share price return and trailing PE ratio for the financial year. We gather this data and pull it into our process to generate a rating for the company. This entire process is automated from end to end and underpinned by artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms. So, Anashrin, a bit more detail on the cadence of the ESG GPS model. Our rating process is a 5-step process. Step 1 is data collection, and I've already spoken about some of the data that we look at. In addition to this, we have a library of keywords that we use to calibrate companies according to ESG. Our keywords come from international reporting and sustainability frameworks. Our keywords also come from the laws of the land. And I should mention here that what is unique about our model is that we calibrate companies according to keywords that are country specific. Steps 2 and 3 relate to our artificial intelligence algorithms and processing. Here, we use natural language processing and context analysis to quantify the ESG disclosure for a company. In step 4, we combine the disclosure scores with financial metrics, including the PE ratio, the share price movement, as well as the market capitalization for the company, to end up with an ESG rating between 1 and 4, with 4 being the highest rating.
So Anissa, is there any human intervention?
There definitely is, Anashrin. Step 5 in our process is ratification, where we have an independent ratification committee, which is an overarching governance body that applies their expert market knowledge to make recommendations on any changes that need to be made to the ratings. This step is important because although our methodology is sound, the element of expert human knowledge is key in validating the ratings produced.
Thank you, Anissa, for that synopsis. So there you have it, the ESG GPS model built by Africans for Africa. The products include comprehensive reports, classic reports, and disclosure reports, all of which can be easily accessed through our platform. There's no cyber risk, there's no API costs. All you need is a username and a password, and you are able to access the platform through our link below. So I'm going to let Anissa get off her feet. I'm going to hand over to Andre to help you to navigate to sustainability.
Investors are increasingly applying those non-financial factors of ESG as a part of their assessment process to identify material risks and growth opportunities. So the stakes are high when it comes to compliance and regulation. Talking about the impact of ESG GPS for Nigeria, I'm very pleased to introduce Blessing Ayumheri, the chairperson of the ESG GPS Independent Ratification Committee for Nigeria. Blessing, take it away.
Good day and welcome to the launch of ESG GPS in Nigeria. This is quite an exciting moment for a country like Nigeria and for the whole of Africa that we are taking the center stage in championing ESG. ESG stands for environment, social, and governance. Now, these are key factors that every corporation and businesses should pay attention to. How are we doing when it comes to E, environment, to S, social, and to G, governance? Environment have to do with how compliant are we? What is our carbon emission? What is our eco-friendly culture? A lot of things are, on the table for discussion when we look at the E. When we come to the S, also we are asking about our responsibility with our social fabric. Our employees, for example, our community. How responsible are we? Are they happy? Are we consciously leading in this area? For governance, we have a lot of people that have been doing so well in governance because all over the world we have regulators, that have driven the fact that governance must be the center stage. I'm happy that in Nigeria, for example, we have the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Nigerian Stock Exchange, as well as other regulators that are pushing for compliance in terms of governance. We also are happy to see them already pushing for things on ESG. The other day, the central bank governor was pushing and encouraging banks to ensure that their lending practices take into effect what the customers are doing with respect to the environment. These are great times and these are interesting times. And with ESG GPS by Risk Insights coming to ensure that you don't have to struggle on how to capture your ESG activities, but you have a tool that will help you both capture and report it. That is such an amazing time for us to embrace. The reason why it is amazing is because Risk Insights have taken the pain to ensure that through mathematical and AI, machine learning as well. So with such tools that ESG GPS by Risk Insight is making available, artificial intelligence and machine learning, ensuring that a system has been built. Many years of research has been put to develop this. And it's a tool that has been handed over to corporations to be able to both evaluate what you are doing and to report them. You could be doing very well in ESG, but if you are not reporting them, then you can't get the mileage that you are supposed to get. So with the ESG GPS tool in your hand, you are able to both capture what you are doing and also report them. And you are able to see clearly how you are faring in the market, especially when you compare to your peers in the industry that you are in. So it's an interesting time for us to embrace this tool that is built by Africans for Africa and the rest of the world to begin to leapfrog, as far as businesses are concerned. The reason is because companies are better positioned when they focus on ESG. Report has shown that companies that were ESG focused, they were able to navigate the pain and the challenges of the COVID-19, that many companies went through. Companies that have been focusing on the issue of social and governance and environment, they were able to do better in terms of their returns. And the simple reason is because they are future focused. They are sustainable in their practices. And we don't know what the future holds. But if we begin to do the right thing and do them with the right tool, then we are positioned for a better future. Interesting times for Africa, interesting time for Nigeria. I welcome you to an opportunity to attract funds as they come globally. More than $35 trillion have been invested globally in ESG investing. And fund managers are looking for yet other opportunities, and the projection is that this will grow in the next 5 years. Will you be that organization and establishment that fund managers will be going to partner, to invest? Because ESG compliant companies tend to perform better in terms of financial performance as well than the companies that are not ESG. As we navigate the future together, as we move together, as we ensure that we position Africa and Nigeria in the community of nations, of those that are ready to do responsible and impact investing, I am thinking that we all have a better future to navigate. But let me say this, impact investing when it comes to ESG is not about sacrificing returns for, community kind of investment. No, in fact, report has shown that when you are ESG focused, you are both, early to return and also to sustainability. This is amazing. And that is the reason why we are thinking that Nigeria embracing this among the few African countries that are in the front of ESG, we will be able to do and position for very huge foreign direct investment and leapfrog for a better future. I hope that together we will make use of this tool that is in our hand and benefit from the huge funds that are looking for the right investments, vehicles to carry them on. Welcome again to ESG GPS launch in Nigeria, and welcome to a sustainable.
As you can see, the ESG GPS rating tool is years ahead of the game. providing accurate and relevant data for all stakeholders about companies' ESG performance. It is simple and elegant, yet very mathematically sophisticated. With that in mind, we now moved into our panel, comprised of sustainability experts from around the globe. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Nkem Kumba, a lecturer in applied mathematics from the University of Michigan, USA, Ruqayyah El Rufai, partner Sustainability and Climate Change for PwC Nigeria, Mohamed Akuji, the CEO of Imperial Logistics, and Pearl Uzokwe, the Governance and Sustainability Head of Sahara Group. If we can jump straight into our questions. Dr. Nkumba, as a scientist, how will your empirical models help SDGs for the African continent? Why is it so important to have a model for Africa in terms of the SDGs?
The ESGs are good for Africa because they embed factors that are very relevant to the African economic milieu. Many of the theories that govern global economics, global indicators of economic performance, like GDP, they are based on concepts, some of which have not really been well materialized in Africa. And so embedding ESGs is a way of addressing those things that come directly from an African material environment. I believe very strongly that applying ESGs and extracting data, being able to pull data from Africa itself, would put all the corporate actors. There are over 400 companies in Africa that gross over $1 billion a year. Our public sector is notorious globally for poor governance. So embedding this and extracting data, empirical data, to inform models that clarify how African corporations and governance systems are performing in terms of their impact on the environment and sustainability, their impact on society, social inequities and social value systems, and governance. Being able to embed this in the models that inform African policy and activities and investment arrangements, I think is much more valuable to the African environment than many of the external economic theories of capitalism versus socialism and all the things that have been tried and tested. I think it's time for Africa to embrace ESG very fully.
Nkem, thank you. Ruqayyah, could you share with us your insights on this subject?
SDGs and ESG are mutually exclusive frameworks for the attainment of progress for people, the planet, and prosperity. Insights are embedded in data, and making fact-based decisions are critical for Africa to make any meaningful progress in the attainment of SDGs and also, attaining impact or making impact on the ESG agenda. We're in the last decade of action, and this decade matters because we just have 10 years left for the attainment of SDGs. A bespoke empirical model for Africa is necessary, and this would be cascaded, of course, to individual country levels. This is necessary for fostering, SDGs and ESG, the SDG and ESG agenda going forward. This is because Africa has peculiar realities that are different, they're unique to us, and very independent to the region. The ESG issues and risks are also very peculiar to African countries. And linking, these issues with ESG issues, would require relying on empirical methods to predict, trends, performance, and issues that, will open the interrelationship for optimization of investments for value creation. And furthermore, when you look at our market maturity levels, they're different. Our societal norms are different. That's why, a model developed and tested based on the African market, its people, its socio-economic veracities will lead to, proffering better, suitable solutions for the continent.
As we can see, an empirical ESG model is critical to the sustainability of businesses and eventually societies. Pearl, in your position overseeing and coordinating a sustainability agenda for your private sector international company, what would you define as a critical factor for successful sustainability strategy implementation? Pearl?
Thank you, Andre. That's a really good question again, and it's one that I hold dear, really, because I think it gives an opportunity to ensure that in agenda setting, sustainability strategy setting, you ensure that for success, you do not take a cut-and-paste approach to solving this or addressing this issue. It's really important that you contextualize. And what do I mean by this? I think from the African continent, or if I speak for Nigeria as one of the examples, there's a lot right now in the media on a global stage about climate change and the urgency, and that is absolutely true. But at the same time, I think that you need to ensure that you are procuring solutions that are fit for purpose. So with climate change, I would say with the African continent as a whole, emissions are at best 3% of the global emissions when compared to global emissions. Then you also look at some of the challenges of the setup here. In Nigeria, for example, you still have almost 60% of people without access to power. What that means for us is that the transition will have to be more gradual than it is in some of the more developed countries. So in setting your sustainability strategy to ensure that you do not lose your business leads from the very beginning, it's important that you propose solutions and propose a strategy that is going to be fit for purpose, that's going to be aligned to your business's mission, that's going to ensure that you combine doing good with doing well, so that everyone, in a sense, feels like this is a win-win situation. So for me, that initial stage where you have to sit down and basically talk and engage with the business leaders, it's really important that as you set your ESG priorities, you are ensuring that it's fit for purpose. So that business case has to be very, very contextualized. And then you have to sit down and assess and prioritize which of those ESG focus areas are most important for your business and will ensure that it thrives, ensure that it's sustained. And then, of course, you now decide on what it is you're going to collaborate, what you're going to measure, what you're going to report. And tools like what you're procuring here is really, really helpful again, because I like that it has been contextualized. It's going to be fit for the purpose, and it's going to have metrics that have taken into consideration the unique characteristics that we have here in Africa. So, of course, once you have that, then it ensures that there's buy-in and that the strategy that has been mapped out and bought into by the business lead can then be communicated.
Thank you. Thank you for that comprehensive answer. So, as we know, capital markets drive transformation in economies. And unstructured data, such as climate change and social inclusivity, is paramount for measuring and monitoring. How do you see this change taking center stage in Africa? Rukaya?
Capital markets are a very important intermediary for mobilizing resources domestically, even tapping into foreign capital as well, and channeling the use to corporates. ESG impact, that can be created through capital markets for a greener and more inclusive economies in Africa, and in this case in Nigeria, cannot be overemphasized. When you look at, the role capital markets have traditionally played in ensuring financial stewardship, in fostering transparency and accountability of corporates to shareholders. The capital markets have done well. They've been instrumental to achieving this. But we're now in a new era. We're in an era where, non-financial stewardship as well is critical in creating value that is not only long-term, but it's also shared among diverse stakeholders, and this is through the advancement of ESG agenda. in the corporate agenda and part of, strategic priorities. ESG performance of corporates, of course, including climate change and social progress and inclusivity, has to be monitored and tracked. And having it done in a standardized and harmonized way, on capital market platforms will firstly act as an incentive for the ESG laggards, the corporate ESG laggards. It will provide the much desired performance benchmarks, and it will also provide, independent data and information to diverse stakeholders on how companies ESG, companies for better and for the greater good of the society.
Rukaya, thank you very much for sharing these insights with us. Dr. Nkumba, do you have anything to add here?
Thank you, Andres, for that question. Yes, capital markets do drive transformation in economies. They are the marketplace for the marketplace. They provide indicators of the vibrance of the economic sector and the availability of capital to drive those the economies. In the last 50, 100 years, the models that have informed the capital markets, say New York, London, and most Western and Asian markets, have not captured the effects of corporate performance on the environment and social inequities as part measure of what it means to be a company, to be doing well. But now the whole world is facing its consequences. You see increasing GDPs in countries coming at the same time with increasing poverty and inequities. I think Africa can introduce the ESGs and more measures and thoughts that capture both the effect of corporate activity on the environment and the broad inequities that still exist in our societies. And I think Nigeria is well positioned as Africa's undoubted, undisputable powerhouse to rethink how it emerges as an African economy that can introduce thought processes that are more humane, that are more humanistic, and capture corporate activity that provide more good for society. Let me say.
Thank you for that. CEOs across the globe have been relooking at their company strategies to ensure that net zero for 2030 is given strategic and operational priority. It is seen as something affecting the company's license to operate, based on disclosure principles. Mohammed, what do you think about it?
We've made it a cornerstone of our strategy. So, we have 6 strategic pillars, and one of our pillars is ESG, as we call it. I always believe that business has got a role to play, not only in terms of making profit, but in terms of its responsibility of its people as well as the planet. We have taken ESG very seriously in our business. We have not made it a standalone part of our strategy. We've integrated it as part of our business. And what I mean by that is we see ESG as a competitive advantage in terms of us being able to offer services that are responsible in terms of what ESG requires, and it for me is this triple bottom line that we all are seeking. And what's good about it at Imperial is our purpose is about connecting Africa and the world and providing quality products and services to its people. And we have a responsibility as a logistics company to be able to deliver on that, but do it in a way that makes a difference as well. So we've got, a very clear target in terms of our emissions as a logistics company. We've got a number of CSI initiatives where we make a difference to the people who we sell our products to. We've got various clinics across South Africa. We've got eye clinics in Nigeria. And, we certainly see our organization being much more purpose-driven, but at the same time, using ESG as a differentiator.
Mohammed, thank you. Dr. Kem, would you like to add here?
You see, Andres, I think this is very, very valuable for us, especially in Africa, where matters of disclosure are so challenging. From the public sector to the private sector, lots of background deals. Data is not made available to the public to be informed when it either votes for candidates or invests in companies. Lots of background deals. There seems to be an almost complete disconnect between the corporate and public sector governance and society that sustains these structures. So the drive towards net zero should be embraced, I think, to broaden or push forward the need for disclosure in the public and private sectors. Disclosure is what gives the public and even the investors and employees, corporate stakeholders, the information to be able to make better decisions about the welfare of their countries and their personal lives. So disclosures, in my mind, is and should be embraced as a game changer. I think Nigeria has an opportunity not to replicate and simply follow Western and previous economic theories. Follow them very, very well. Some apply to Nigeria and the whole globe. But nevertheless, incorporate these new features that would provide a different path, a path that is more responsible, a path that is more democratic governance as well in the private sector, a path that empowers every stakeholder in every institution to have a voice. It's past time where the big corporations in Nigeria perform without the public knowing what they are doing or not doing until after the fact. Disclosures would help inform the public and the companies themselves and their stakeholders for better performance.
Thank you. As you know, social transformation forms the backbone of capital consciousness. Social impact investing is increasing across the globe, and Africa is there to attract social impact funds from asset managers. Pearl, do you see this becoming major for Nigeria?
Well, thank you for the question, Andre. And I think the short answer is yes. The why is probably a little bit longer. I mean, it's pretty easy to see for Nigeria. You have 200 million people in a country with unemployment estimated to reach about 32% for this year. You have 40% of the people living on just over $1 a day. And then you have the statistics talking about Nigeria potentially becoming the third most populous country in the world just by 2050. It's clear that the issues that we currently face are most likely going to increase. And what else is clear? It's clear that the government, as it is today, and philanthropy alone, will certainly be grossly insufficient to solve the problems that we're currently beset with. But I mean, the good news in all of this is that Nigeria still has the largest economy in Africa. We have some industries like tech, for example, incredibly vibrant and growing with each day. You have large firms within tech, for example, delivering services in healthcare, in agriculture, and finance, for example. We've moved the needle significantly. And they're firms that are providing e-commerce platforms and various other retail-related services and going further along than you have in some other developed nations, actually. So it gives me hope and encouragement, because what you see here is that the private sector is already contributing about 90% to Nigeria's GDP. So what you're starting to see from the private sector is just investors and organizations that have a greater understanding and appreciation of the long-term benefits of development as well as doing well. So they've gone beyond philanthropy, which is where the concept of social impact investing comes in and is very strong, and saying we're going to ensure that we combine doing well with doing good. So it's not just altruistic, and of course that becomes of interest to private sector investors like ourselves, because they all have bought into this third value concept. And that's where social impact investing really presents like the perfect opportunity to turn the tide to create a win-win situation for all. And so for me, I just say that sustainability makes it imperative that where you have social enterprise and those involved in social impact investing, that they ensure they present commercially viable options so that you make significant impact. And it really does turn the needle. We've seen significant investments over the last few years in that space, and I have no reason to doubt that this tide will turn anytime soon. Nigeria is absolutely ripe and ready for the financial return that we can get from social impact investment. It's only going to increase the opportunities, and you're creating positive impact. You're drawing private sector capital to an area that promotes development. It really goes without saying that this is an area to watch and one that will continue to grow. I mean, if you take ourselves, for example, even within our foundation, the Sahara Foundation, we have launched our inaugural cohort of a social impact fellows, one that I'm very passionate about. And we basically have these young social entrepreneurs who are focused on generating ideas that are going to basically solve problems concerning access to energy, that are going to promote sustainable environments. We're essentially putting our money where our mouth is, and I have no reason to doubt that the private sector will follow, and we will see an increase in Nigeria.
Pearl, thank you very much. Mohammed, I'd like to get your views on how logistic management companies are taking into account climate change, circular economies, communities, and suppliers. How is it becoming a strategic imperative for your company?
Thank you, Andre. It's become a strategic imperative by us, firstly, setting a purpose as an organization in terms of not being only profit-driven, but also saying that we are a company that wants to contribute to people and planet. So that is the start. We have then identified very specific initiatives around our fleet management, particularly around our fuel consumption. We've put in digital fleet management capability within our business to be able to measure that, so that we can bring down our carbon footprint and be able to utilize our fleet more effectively. We have also got a very important people strategy in terms of how we are changing the culture of organization, and a big part of that is transforming our perception from a safety perspective, transforming from a diversity perspective, as well as transforming from a gender perspective. So there's a number of initiatives that are on the go that will result in us showing massive improvement from that perspective. And then in terms of making a difference to the communities in which we operate, we run over 80 clinics or support 80 clinics as part of an enterprise development initiative in South Africa that we're very proud of. We've got eye clinics, as I said, in Nigeria that make a difference to people getting their eyesight back. And then very important from a governance perspective, we are a listed company, and we obviously see that as a key differentiator. People in Africa want to work with companies that have got a good reputation, that have got anti-corruption practices and have got good governance. And governance, social responsibility, being responsible about the climate is no longer a box ticking nice to have. In my mind, it is a differentiator, and it talks to our purpose, it talks to our client value proposition, and very importantly, it talks to our employee value proposition.
Mohammed, thank you very much. This is unfortunately all for today for our panel. We thank you for insightful and comprehensive answers. Should you have any further questions to our panelists or speakers, please kindly email us. With that, I would like to bring your attention to our closing speaker, Mr. Edward Emery, the CEO of Instinctive Partners. Edward joined us from his office in London. Edward, over to you.
Thank you to all participants, hosts and attendees tuning in. The approach to ESG investing in sub-Saharan Africa is closely linked to longer-term sustainable development benchmarks. And this shapes how borrowers in the region frame sustainable investment opportunities, including which types of issuers source financing through the international capital markets. This is much of the reason why development finance institutions as sources of capital into sub-Saharan Africa have played such a significant role in shaping the way investment into the region is positioned. However, this is starting to change as we see traditional investors, both on and off continent, start to change the way they allocate funds to African opportunities and how they link them to core ESG imperatives. After all, many of Africa's economic centres and industries are exposed to physical climate change risks. Large cities, including Lagos in Nigeria, Cape Town in South Africa, are affected by rising sea levels. It is not news that countries in Africa are some of the world's most severely affected by climate change. These impacts range from changing rainfall patterns affecting agriculture and reducing food security to water insecurity and decreasing fish resources in large lakes from rising temperatures and overfishing. Then there is the impact of social inequalities to consider too, further exacerbated by the year that was 2020 and coronavirus. As with the rest of the world, Africa's economy was severely constrained by the COVID-19 pandemic, contracting by 2.1% in 2020. However, the continent is positioned for recovery. GDP in Africa is projected to grow by 3.4% in 2021. This projected recovery from the worst recession in more than half a century will be underpinned by a resumption of tourism, the current rebound in commodity prices, and the rollback of pandemic-induced restrictions. The outlook is, however, subject to great uncertainty from both external and domestic risks. This means there's a lot riding on businesses, governments, and people to start making the kinds of decisions and working towards the types of objectives that support economic recovery, that prioritise environmental ecosystem restoration and redress social inequalities. To do so, we must focus on owning our roles in making a positive contribution, and this requires responsible and accountable leadership focused on building back better. Progress requires different thinking, more collaboration, a longer-term view that extends beyond the now. In Africa, we're starting to see this accountability drive, the way in which the future is possible, taking shape, not just in the formalised commitments to ESG proudly displayed in sustainability reports, but also in how businesses and investors are backing up their intentions with actions and the capital to see them through. That is why the partnership between Instinctive Partners and Risk Insights has been such an important one for us. Together, we help clients address global ESG and sustainability through the lens of African realities, developing solutions that are not only pragmatically executable, but also relevant within the context of the country and the continent they call home. The venture combines Risk Insights' strong ESG data analytics capabilities and the expertise within Instinctive Partners' world-class strategy-led communication approach that focuses on building reputation, combating risk, and delivering impact and value. We believe that ESG as a critical business imperative that delivers competitive advantage and unlocks real value, both for businesses and for stakeholders. To borrow from Google ex-advisor and Kiva board chair Julia Hanna, great companies aren't great because they make lots of money. They make lots of money precisely because they're great. They do the right thing with impact and intentionality. And we believe that with Risk Insights and Instinctive's approach to ESG, we optimize how companies pivot from compliance to driving environmental and societal gain through practical, impactful, and implementable sustainability strategies. After all, not only has the World Economic Forum been actively engaging with corporates worldwide to increase the commitment to ESG and set some clear targets, but the investor community and some corporates are starting to take a harder stance too, including in the boardroom by linking executive remuneration and even in some cases employment tenure to the achievement of ESG commitments. However, we must also recognize that each organization is at a different level of sophistication in their sustainability journey. Some may have embedded an auditable ESG process already as part of their business as usual. Others may only just be beginning to consider what their ESG strategy may encompass. The good news is that wherever you are in your move to securing a more sustainable future for your business and your people and your planet, it's never too late to start. Every bit we do today counts towards a better tomorrow for all. As the Nigerian proverb goes, little by little, the bird builds the nest.
And here we have it. ESG GPS has navigated its way to Nigeria. For more information, please follow us on social media. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for joining ESG Revolution. Goodbye for now.